Greetings and welcome. If you had watched our previous biology video about photosynthesis, you are at the right place. But then if you haven't watched, consider watching that video first because you get more clarity as to where are we leading in this video today. Stay tuned. So today we're going to be talking about the light and the dark phase of photosynthesis. So as we had mentioned before that photosynthesis requires light or radiant energy with carbon dioxide alongside water which is absorbed in the roots to form the products which is glucose and oxygen. So today we're going to be exploring exactly which phases do we have in photosynthesis. So we have the light and the dark phase. Photosynthesis does not only take place in the light but in the dark phase. If photosynthesis didn't take place in the dark phase, we wouldn't be able to breathe during the night because we keep emitting more carbon dioxide and it needs to be absorbed each and every time. So let's get to it. So let's look at the light independent phase. It's light dependent phase. So what is the light dependent phase? So the light dependent phase of photosynthesis is basically the phase that that requires light. So light is required. We synonymally call this the dark phase. So the dark phase, is the light phase. Sorry. So we call this the light phase. So the light phase of photosynthesis is the phase that happens during the presence of light or that requires light energy or radiant energy rather. So the light independent phase of photosynthesis is a phase whereby light is not required. So we otherwise call this the dark phase. So I'm sure you have more clarity there. So in the independent phase, light is not required at all. But then remember that for photosynthesis to happen, we aim to have the products which is glucose and oxygen. So no matter what we do, as long as we get these products, then we have already photosynthesized. But then in this case, we can just say we have synthesized here because there is no light. The photo will account for the light that is required. So let's look first at the light dependent phase or the light phase. As we had mentioned that the light phase requires light to photosynthesize. Therefore, let's have our chloroplast. Why did we draw the chloroplast here? Is because the chloroplast is a part of the plant cell or the part of the leaf whereby photosynthesis takes place. But then we are going to look as to exactly which parts does photosynthesis take place. So this is our double membrane which is covering the whole of the chloroplast. So we'll have a stack of thylakoids which we call the grana here. We don't have to label the diagrams actually because we had labeled them in the previous video, but then I'll just do it for the sake of clarity. So this is the grana or the granum. So this is the stack of thylakoids, and then let's look at how it happens. So the light phase depends on light. Definitely we must have a light source. And what is our main light source here on Earth is the sun. So here is the sun, releasing rays towards the chloroplast. So the sun releases ultraviolet rays towards the leaf, and then the leaf towards the chloroplast. So understand this. Whenever they ask you where photosynthesis takes place, you have to mention the leaf. But then if they ask you exactly as to which organelle where photosynthesis takes place, you have to mention the chloroplast, because the chloroplast is a specification, or is a specific place whereby photosynthesis takes place. So the sun will release here radiant energy. So here, let's say this is radiant energy. Let me use another color. So this is radiant energy. So radiant energy is the light energy. So secondly, we'll have what? Water here. So what is the role of water in photosynthesis? To sustain the life of a plant, number one thing, you need water to be absorbed through the roots. That's why we water our plants, we water our gardens, so that the plants are able to so that the plants are able to live. So water is more like an essential source. So in this case, water will be absorbed in the ground. And then in this case, the radiant energy too, also the radiant energy will be absorbed into the ground. So understand this. In the light phase of photosynthesis, radiant energy and water is present, right? Therefore, in the grana, in the stake of thylakoids, the radiant energy is absorbed. How is it absorbed? So, as we mentioned that the thylakoids, these sac-like things, they contain chlorophyll. Don't forget, they contain chlorophyll. So this chlorophyll can trap radiant energy. So what exactly in the chloroplast traps the energy is the chlorophyll. So if they were to ask a question as to what traps the radiant energy in the chloroplast, you would have to mention the chlorophyll. So the chlorophyll, which is the green pigment, which gives the color to a green plant. So it's a green pigment which you find in this thylakoid. So because there's chlorophyll here, the radiant energy will be trapped into the grana. The water also will be trapped into the grana. That is the first process of light phase photosynthesis. Then here is the products of the reaction of radiant energy and water. So we meet this word called photolysis. What is photolysis? Photolysis is just a simple splitting of water molecules into oxygen atoms and hydrogen atoms. So let's break down the word so that we get more clarity on the definition itself. So photo, we had mentioned according to photosynthesis word, we have mentioned that photo means light, so it remains the same for the photolysis. And the lysis means the breakdown of something. So when something is splitting or something is breaking down, it has to have that word which has got lysis at the end. So this lysis just means splitting or breaking down. So here, photolysis is this process whereby water molecules will split into separate hydrogen and oxygen. Why do they have to split into that? It's because water is composed of hydrogen oxide. So hydrogen, two hydrogens, right, and one oxygen. So through the process of photolysis, we are using the light energy. Where did we get the light energy? Is this radiant energy. So this radiant energy, its work is to split. The radiant energy splits this water molecule within the grana. So the radiant energy is absorbed here and the water also here. So these two will result in separate hydrogen oxide. Will now result in hydrogen and then oxygen. So why did we put 2 here? Oxygen is a gas. Number one thing is a diatomic gas according to the laws of physics. So oxygen is a diatomic gas. Therefore, by the process of photolysis, we have managed to be able to split these water molecules. This water molecule, which is composed of hydrogen and oxygen. Therefore, this will be what? The diatomic oxygen. And then here we'll have what? Hydrogen. And then this hydrogen will go what? To the dark phase. By going to the dark phase, it just means that after the products of the light phase, they will be preserved, or they will be restored. They will be just kept for the dark phase, because during the dark phase we do not have these requirements, which is radiant energy. So there is no sun during the night, so we cannot have photosynthesis during the night. Then how are we able to have photosynthesis during the night? Is because we have got this hydrogen that goes to the dark phase. So this oxygen goes to the atmosphere. So, number one thing, they always tell you that trees bring oxygen. In what way do trees bring oxygen? Is through photosynthesis, this simple process. So, through photosynthesis, we are able to have oxygen to breathe. We are able to have air, which we can breathe, a healthy air, which contains oxygen. So, this oxygen goes to the atmosphere, but then the hydrogen will go to the dark phase. Another product we'll have, which will go to the dark phase, is ATP. ATP is energy, basically, is adenosine triphosphate. So this is energy that is produced from the reaction between water and radiant energy. We do not only split or the hydrogen oxide or the water molecule, but we also create ATP, which is called adenosine triphosphate. So this is the full word, is adenosine triphosphate. So adenosine triphosphate is the same thing as ATP. So ATP is also produced to go to the dark phase also. So ATP, which is the energy, and hydrogen, energized hydrogen. By energized hydrogen, it means it's no longer in contact with the oxygen molecule to have water. So it will be just hydrogen itself alone. So this energized hydrogen will be going to the dark phase, because during the dark phase we do not have these requirements, which are water and the radiant energy. So this is the completion of the light phase of photosynthesis. So we now go to the dark phase. Bear in mind that the dark phase is dependent on the light phase. Otherwise, without the light phase, we cannot have the dark phase. So let's draw again our chloroplast. So we already know that we have only two things that are going to the dark phase, only two things. What are those things? Is energized hydrogen ion or atom rather, and we'll have ATP energy that has been produced through this reaction and the light phase. Now we go to the dark phase. How does the dark phase happen? So here, carbon dioxide will come in. So carbon dioxide is needed for photosynthesis. So we had carbon dioxide over there. We had carbon dioxide, although we didn't really indicate it as to where does it go in, how does it go in, but then we had carbon dioxide because it was essential here. And the same thing here, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide goes into the chloroplast. Why do we find carbon dioxide in the night? Carbon dioxide is not limited to the sun. comparing to radiant energy. So radiant energy is the energy from the sun. So once the sun goes down, or once the sun sets, it means that there's no more radiant energy. Therefore, we'll need to use other things. That's why the light phase produced these two things for us to use in the dark phase for photosynthesis. So in this case, where did the photosynthesis, what was the site for photosynthesis exactly? It was the grana. Why was it the grana? It's because the grana was containing the chlorophyll, which trapped the radiant energy and absorbed the water, which created ATP and photolysed this hydrogen plus. So here, in this case, we will not have the same reaction because now we lack radiant energy. So we lack radiant energy, we lack water. So now we have to have another totally different reaction. So here we'll have what? Carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide plus energized hydrogen plus ATP, adenosine triphosphate, give us glucose. Maybe this is not clear enough, but then I can try to make it more clear. Okay, so carbon dioxide. Where is this carbon dioxide found? Carbon dioxide is found in the atmosphere. Bear in mind that plants do not absorb oxygen. No, plants release oxygen. What evidence, where would you find that as evidence? We find it here in the light phase where oxygen goes back to the atmosphere. So plants do not absorb, it releases. So oxygen is a product of photosynthesis. So in this case, the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will be used and will be combined with the hydrogen, energized hydrogen. This hydrogen didn't just wake up there. We found it all the way here at the light phase. So the light phase, during the process of photolysis, we found the hydrogen plus, and we have it here. And then we found the ATP. Here it is, ATP. So if you combine those, we will get glucose. Glucose is chemically written as C6, H12, and O6. So this is practically glucose. So here, what is the site for photosynthesis? The site is simply the place where photosynthesis takes place. So in this case, the site was the grana. For this case, the site will be the stroma. So the liquid part, bear in mind, the liquid part of the chloroplast is where the dark phase of photosynthesis will take place. It will not take place in the grana. Reason being, in the grana we find chlorophyll, and chlorophyll only absorbs or traps radiant energy and water. In this case, we do not have radiant energy. How can it be trapped in the chloroplast? It cannot. Therefore, it will happen in the stroma. So the stroma, that liquid part, is where the dark phase of photosynthesis takes place, otherwise known as the site of dark phase of photosynthesis. Then that's all. Practically that's all. But then here we had already mentioned the reaction here. We got glucose, right? So glucose here. Now we have glucose. Then we go to the function of the starch granule. So here it is. So now we go to the function of the starch granule. If you had watched our previous video where we explained, or where we basically introduced photosynthesis, we talked that the starch granule is where glucose is stored in form of starch. So after glucose is produced here during the dark phase, it is stored in a starch granule. So a starch granule is responsible for the storage of glucose. So we call a starch granule. Remember that the starch granule is the storage of is a place whereby glucose is stored or it is a grain or a granule or an organ or a organelle or a part, whatever you might call it, but in a scientific term, it's this organelle in the chloroplast whereby glucose is stored in form of starch. So glucose in this case will not be stored in form of glucose like normal glucose like C6, H12, or O6. No, glucose is not going to be stored in the same way. It's because this is called a starch granule. A starch granule stores starch, does not store glucose as it is. So it kind of has this thing called a disguise. It's kind of a disguise. So the glucose will be disguised into a starch, So the glucose will be in form of starch. So it doesn't mean that the starch is exactly glucose as it is, but then glucose is a way or is a form. Starch is a form whereby glucose is stored here in the starch granule. So this starch granule will be responsible for the storage of glucose in form of starch. Thank you for watching so much. We hope you liked the video. If you have any question or any suggestion, please don't bother emailing us. Thank you.
Z1, let's go, boy!